Welcome to Out of the Blank.
Welcome back to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. I'm here with Kasper.
Hello. It's nice to be back. Nice to be on the screen, sharing time again. So it's all good.
It's been a bit. We haven't talked since like a while. I think probably about.
And then there was that lovely project, which was fantastic. That was a lot of fun to do. But
the best part was you didn't know that my film was going to have a second part. You thought it was just you that were going to be the voice person.
Not at all. And that's when I was watching it, I went, what the? And it's what I loved was the fact that everybody just went with it, kind of thing, and it's a good group of people with such diverse the diverse people that you have on for your conversations all the time, and the fact that everybody just went was fantastic. So I loved the second part more than the first part in a way.
Well, it's probably because the first part you were involved in. It's hard to like your own stuff. Like whatever I make, I always feel like it's crap. So like the film to me, I didn't even expect it to get as many. It got me over 100 subscribers after I put it up. I was like, that's interesting. I don't know. I'll probably gonna end up losing some because they're gonna see I'm post a daily show, which people find like, oh my God, like just turn off notifications if it bothers you that much. But the film, for instance, I'm making a second one. And that one's more solo project, my own kind of endeavors. And that one I don't have a deadline on, which I don't even know when I'm going to finish it. Honestly, I wrote a song yesterday. So like whenever I'm not doing something, if I can't do filming right now, we have a winter storm coming through. So it went from 60 yesterday. It's 25 right now. And I'm like, this isn't fun. It snowed. My door was frozen shut. And then I was just like, it's just, like, I don't get it. Like, and some person, I roll up to the gas station because I always get my energy drinks before my workout in the morning. Yeah. And this person goes, hey man, you sober? I'm like, it's 4:30 in the morning. Yes, I'm sober. And then he's just like, you mind riding me over to the bridge? I was like, no. I was like, I'm not taking you over to no, that's like a 30-minute drive. I got to be at like my work in like 10 minutes. And he goes, all right, man, straight. And he's eating like chicken while he's saying it. And I'm just like, what? Like, what is your life? No. I wish I had that innocence or that happiness.
Well, exactly. And it's that type of thing where you go, obviously, if you're asking that question, you are not. Are you sober? Because, straight people don't come up to, or sober people don't come up and go, hey, you sober? Yeah, me too. Awesome.
Unless you're like in an AA meeting or something. You sober? Yeah, I'm sober. All right, cool.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, good. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, good. That's it's the characters that you kind of think. That's the one thing if COVID is kind of robbed those of some of this stuff, it's that those when you're outside meeting those those random encounters that you have with people where you go, did that just happen? Like one of the weirdest things that ever happened to me, and I'll remember it to this day. It was such an odd day. I was in Vancouver. And I just kind of started acting, and I'd been cast in this student production. They were shooting in a student film that was filming in a theater on a Sunday morning. So I get up on a Sunday morning, catch the bus, go into, downtown Vancouver, and I'm walking and there's nobody. And it's the middle of summer. And I'm walking down the street and I can see this guy comes around the corner and he's wearing a long trench coat, one of those black beanie hats. He's probably about 6 feet tall. And he must be so hot. It's like 10 o'clock in the morning and he's walking towards me and I go, oh, okay, here we go. I'm just going to have to go with this one. And he stops in front of me. He goes, hey man, want to buy some fish? And he opens up his jacket and it's lined with fresh fish that he's got hung on hooks.
Where are you hanging out at?
Yeah. And he's got there's 12 fish inside his jacket. And then
were they wrapped?
No, they were just fish that it was like he
Be
either
hold on,
stolen
hold
them
on,
from.
hold on. Be honest. It would be way weirder if they were like individually like sealed, shut, airlock, wrapped bags of fish. Where you're like, did you do this at home? Like this isn't
Yeah,
a
exactly.
store thing.
Exactly. So this guy just stole them, but he had these little fish hooks. It's sort of like the guy, hey man, want to buy a watch? That was that kind of thing, except it's like, want to buy some fish? And I went, uh, no, thanks, man. And he went, yeah, that's okay, man. Cool. And he just kind of goes, and then I noticed the smell and I went, oh my God, where did that come from? And then as I'm walking along, about 20 minutes later, I'm just about to get to the theater and another guy walks around the corner. He's got his jacket and stuff. And I'm like, okay, it's going to be one of those kind of days. And he stops in front of me and I go, hello. And he goes, hey. And I go, hey. Then he kind of reaches into his pocket and he opens up this opened package of processed like meat, like there's a bologna or something. And he goes, would you be interested in trading some money for this open bag of meat? And so I went, trading some money. He didn't say purchase. He said, would you be interested in trading some money for this open meat? And I went, uh, no, I'm good. And he went, okay, man, thank you. And then he just kept walking and I kind of went, what the heck? What's going on today? I don't get it. I don't get it.
It's just it's the see, this is what I really think I understand about people thinking that we're in a simulation and stuff like that, is because just the vast amount of experiences that are out there and the vast amount of like just what becomes normal as a part of your life, where you're like, where's like, if you do the same thing every single day, eventually it becomes so normal, even if it was weird at first. For instance, for me, my digestive issues, if I don't go to the bathroom for weeks, if I tell someone I haven't gone in like weeks, they're like, what? And I'm like, oh, that's like so normal to me because I'm so used to it after dealing with it for a couple of years now. Then you start realizing like, oh shit. Like, so whenever someone does something that's like out of the ordinary, I'm just trying to think like, that person's experience their whole entire life, that's just been a normal thing. Like Tom Brady kissing his kid on the lips and his kid's like 9 years old. Like that's fucking weird for a lot of people. But for him, it's normal. And their family, I don't see him ever publicly kiss his wife on the lips, but he'll kiss his boy on the lips. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I mean, hey, every different strokes, different folks, but then you understand why people are crazy around here.
Yeah, I know this. Yeah, I'm not
There's
the
a
guy. I
whole
won't go there.
section category of Holocaust deniers. Like that's what I've been getting interested in, is like the JFK stuff. I've been trying to get into like the more like, I want to talk to like the documentarians or authors of nonfiction who like have real events, but they are recording it. So they have a lot of information to do the show and stuff. And you'll come across like these Holocaust deniers are saying it never existed. Now, that one I can understand on two aspects. One is that they say it's 6 million people. The only thing I can really understand is that like it's like maybe they rounded up like 6 million exact. Come on, like how close was it? And then are you blending the numbers to make this person seem like a overall horrible character, which he was? But then you get into like the category of like the people that just can't believe that something that bad could ever happen in the world. And then you find a sense of understanding. And I think that's like the hardest thing to do, is that whenever I hear something, I try and think of the other kind of angle to it. And people are like, that's devil's advocate. I'm like, that's not devil's advocate. That's just fucking lining up all your P's and Q's. I mean, I think that's one of the most important things whenever you make a decision in life. If you're going to buy a new car, do you just go, fuck it, $7,000, here you go? Or do you try and figure out what's wrong with it, see what's going on? Why is it $7,000? You're going to tackle all those different angles.
Yeah, history is one of those things that it's, when they say history is written by the winner, one of the, I don't know if interesting is the right word for it, but one of the things that has always sort of intrigued me, I guess, is the fact that when you talk about the Holocaust, which is uh, there were more people killed in Russia when Stalin took
Yeah.
over than what the Germans did, but nobody talks about that.
That's Putin.
And I don't know why that, it's the, it was the Cold War stuff and all this. But at the same time, there's, with the freedom of information and all the stuff, that's people still don't really talk about it. They do, because it's documented somewhere, as it happened. But history is one of those things that lately I've been getting into, and it's one of these rabbit holes you fall down. I'm always a big language person. I love language. And I was raised a Catholic, and ended up doing lots of different things. But there's always been certain things that about the Bible that I've always questioned, and I've always, and then you get into arguments about, I have the people that they don't believe in evolution. They believe that, everything that's in the book. And one of the things that you can get yourself in so much trouble, but I've always looked at it and I go, look, the Bible was written by people. So there's going to be screw ups in it, kind of thing. And there's so many things that you can point out in the Bible that where you'll have people that will say, no, this happened and this happened and this happened. And you go, how do you know that? And it goes, because it's written there. And you go, well, there's problems with that just because it's written there. Like, for example, there's wish I could remember his name now. He's a New Testament scholar. His first name is Bart, and I'll have to look him up, kind of thing, because I've just been looking up at some of his videos. They just sort of streamed online, but they talk about, there's this joke that it's not really a joke, it's like a pun that Jesus uses when he's in the temple, when he's talking to the Pharisees, and it's about being born again, because the Greek word for being born again can mean renew, but it can also mean rebirth. You crawl back in and you do it again, according to the Greek thing. Now, if Jesus didn't speak Greek, like the whole story, like when he was doing this story originally, everything would have been in Aramaic. So the fact that this joke only works in Greek because it's a Greek pun and there is no Aramaic pun for it means that it didn't happen. Jesus didn't say it. Somebody said, wouldn't it be funny if Jesus said this? Because that would be better, because Jesus didn't speak Greek, or he may have, but he wasn't at the time. And just little things like that, little tweaks on the language where you go, I remember reading, there's a book called Valis by Philip K. Dick, who's a fantastic writer. I don't know if you've read any Philip K. Dick, but you really should.
I don't really read.
Yeah, well, Philip K. Dick wrote 57 novels in like 7 years. He was responsible for Blade Runner, Minority Report. Blade Runner was originally called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And then it was converted.
Thank God they changed the name on that one.
Exactly, but the original story is really weird, but it's all about the whole replicant. Anyway, he was I think he probably was the only person who's ever like described a drug trip where you went, yeah, that's a trip, kind of thing. But one of the things that he did in this story Valis is he talks about how the New Testament was written in what they call Koine Greek, which is Common Greek. And I'm not really a linguist scholar, but what I understand about Common Greek is there's no punctuation and there's no capital letters. The people who are reading it would know where to break up the words because there's context. But for us translating it, if you have a phrase like God is now here, can be easily God is nowhere by where you put the W. So it's all, when you're translating it, a lot of what we get in the Bible is because it was translated. And then, there's that classic phrase by, Aryan, I remember a leader of the Aryan nation in Canada used the phrase, if English was good enough for Jesus, it's good enough for me. It's that type of thing where you go, I think you're missing the point, because the Bible's been translated so many times. Of course, there's going to be things in it that have changed, and there's certain things that were added for certain people. And they also talk about things like, how women, the role of women in the church women used to have a lot of power in the church, kind of thing, until around the 2nd or 3rd century AD, where the men in power went, we need to stop this, kind of thing. So certain things were added to the Bible to take away women's roles in the church, and so they did this, there's historical fact that they were doing this. So I'm looking at all this going, this is just fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. The Bible is probably probably the most famous book in the world, kind of thing, but it's been translated so many times. It's been in different languages, and every time you translate it, you lose some nuance because you have to change it. And also what they were dealing with back then is not what we're dealing with now. Like when they talk about like the book of Revelation and all that kind of stuff, they're probably referencing stuff going on. It's like for us, like we would reference things like COVID and the fires in California, and and the snowstorms that you're having. It'd be like, oh, this is this is the end of the world stuff. Whereas back then they were referencing things like the Romans showing up,
I fucking
and
wish
doing
it
all
was
this
the
stuff.
end of the world, dude. I fucking wish.
What? So it could start again, or just so it could
No,
just
because if we're going to talk, best example, the Bible, for instance, you have one person, literally, you're going to write something that every future generations are going to keep reading and reading. Is going to be the most popular book in history. You know, that fucking trip that goes into your head, you're like, I'm going to fucking add some fun shit in here to really swing it my way. And then it gets passed down and it becomes law in a practical way.
well, where and where some of that stuff came in was literally, they talk about how the Bible was originally copied, and it was copied by dudes, monks, in sitting in monasteries going, "La, la, 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 la." Some of them didn't spell right. Some of them could barely read themselves. They're copying. It doesn't mean, just because you copy something doesn't mean you can read it. So if you're copying something that you don't understand, you don't read, you can make spelling mistakes. Some people added stuff just because they got bored. And are you going to fact check all your stuff? And a lot of the people who were copying it, they didn't they didn't read either, kind of thing. Their bosses were like, yeah, it looks fine, yeah, that's good. So and then they send off all the manuscripts, and of course, they get to the head office, and they read it, and they go, no, what the? Oh my god. Oh, well, fine, yeah, that's just fine, we'll just keep it in there. A classic example of how you can deal with that is the American Canadian aluminum and the British aluminium. The actual spelling of that word and pronunciation of it is aluminium. But then there was a spelling mistake at a university in the United States, I think it was Berkeley, in the early 30s, or actually even longer, the turn of the century. And like 10,000 textbooks were printed with aluminum rather than aluminium. And the heads of the school just went, it's now aluminum. We'll just teach it as aluminum. It's not that big a deal. It's in America. We'll just, we do things different. It'll become aluminum. And that's how that happened. It was just a spelling mistake. That's all it was, but it's changed the word for things like that. So if things like that can happen, you look at how things in the Bible were probably done like that. Stuff was added, stuff, when they talk about it's the word of God and things, yeah, some of it's God was talking to somebody, yeah, but then somebody else has to write it down, kind of thing. So it's one of those, it's a very interesting book, and it's a very interesting how you mentioned how it is.
Well, it's like the reason fact checkers and all that stuff is being hijacked now. Like, that term doesn't mean what it initially meant as fact. And the next thing you know, facts are not going to mean the same thing. And people aren't, whenever you say, oh, it's a fact, people are like, fucking, facts are flip flop. You're like, well, that's not what the definition of a fact is. And it's just like, I think it's like good if you're correcting yourself because you were previously wrong before, but the fact that you were so 100% doubling down on so much stuff, it makes it more difficult, which is like, I understand the term knowledge is power now in a different sense from when I was a kid. I'm starting to notice a lot of aspects of things where I'm like, damn it, like this is some crucial shit. Like we should be probably talking about, like reading in books and stuff like that. Just the fact that storytelling, like when I was a kid, they had a class experiment where one person would whisper to one person, the other person would whisper to the next person, and they keep going down the line. One of my friends, who's known to be like this fucking like Joker style type like me, just looks over to me and goes, I fucked a bitch. And I'm like, that's not what was passed down. What was really passed down? Passed down. I'm like, God damn it. He's holding the keys to all the information. I have to say it to this person over here. So I whisper in this girl's ear and I go, I fucked a bitch. And she's like, what? And I get sent to the office. And I'm like, it fucks it up for everyone. One person just playing a joke, holding the keys to power. It's like, if you were given infinite knowledge or an answer to something, what would you do with that? And then people feel like, I don't know what I would do with that. Like,
yeah.
I had recently contacted Bezos and I got a reply from Bezos.
Oh, did you?
He was like, sorry, at this time, Mr. Bezos can't do your podcast. Sorry for any inconvenience, but if he changes his mind, he'll make sure to reach out to you. And I was like, I wasn't even expecting a fucking reply, but it's just that type of shit. Like, are you willing to use maybe your money, do whatever to be able to benefit society, or you want to make your life better? And the answer is more times than not, you're probably just going to want to make your life better because you don't know any of these people. You don't have a connection. That's the whole point of building communities and things of that sort. So you have this open communication, you have this style and this understanding. But now you hear a rumor, it can be somewhat true. Like Richard Gere. Remember that guy?
Yeah.
Gerbil in the ass? Is that
Yeah.
real? What is that? Is
Yeah.
that a Sylvester Stallone thing? Or was that because he left Scientology and they were trying to throw some dirt on him? People are saying it's true, but I mean, are you going to be it sucks to be the guy that would be, that rumor would start and they would be like, oh yeah, I could see that. That would suck to be that. But if it's not true, a lot of, I mean, it's still floating around today. It makes it more difficult with like the less communication, makes it harder to be able to tell if this is true or not, which spreads more misinformation, and misinformation and disinformation and all these words start to fly around and it just becomes more difficult to understand what the fuck is true.
This is why it's interesting. Yeah. I mean, your last guess, or was it a couple where you're talking about the pamphlets, getting pamphlets in the mail kind of thing. Well, that's, it's the same type of thing. I mean, it's the idea like people would just write shit on pamphlets, put it in your mailbox and then see what would happen kind of thing, so, and, depending on where you were, you may not get a lot of, you could get away with a lot of stuff before somebody went, hey, did you get one of those pamphlets in the mail? Yeah. Should we tell somebody about that? I mean, this is ridiculous. Or this is how, secret clubs and secret societies started up, where you get pamphlets would go around, nobody's talking, depending on where you grew up and what type of, little town or village or city you were in, you have, and then you've got, there's a great, there was a Murder, She Wrote episode. It was kind of like that, where back in the day, and snail mail was the big thing. There was this woman who had sent out a letter that she didn't want read. So what she did to counter the idea that she'd sent out this letter and it's already in the post and it's going to be mailed, is she did this campaign where she started sending out hundreds and hundreds of just letters to everybody with false gossip in it. And she was pretending like she was like, where you get those like, I've kidnapped your neighbor messages or whatever. And so she sent a bunch of letters with like, such and such is sleeping with such and such, or this person stole money from this person, or this person, and just hundreds and hundreds, because she was trying to cover up the fact that she'd already sent this sort of gossipy letter. And things like that, you can't really do that anymore kind of thing, like with technology and things, although technology is, you have somebody tweet something and you're right, somebody says that thing, like with Richard Gere, somebody says that thing, and all you need is like some people to see it and go, really? Wow. And then they log off kind of thing. They're like,
I hurt my ears.
I'm sorry, I don't know, I don't even know what that was. I don't know why I did that, but and they go, wow, it's so they and then they log off, they're not doing anything, and then they tell their friends, hey, did you hear that thing? But they didn't read the rest, going, by the way, this is rubbish, of course he didn't do that, and that's sort of where we're at right now with technology.
Well, how do you know though? That's the thing, is that I think so much has been exposed nowadays, like Army Hammer trying to eat his ex-girlfriend's ribs. Like that sounds like a fucking rumor, and it's very hard to believe. And then you find out, oh, he admitted to it. He's like, yeah, I did do that, which even makes it harder to know what's a joke, what's this. And that's when you get into the whole censorship thing. But I remember when I printed out business cards, I think the first year for this podcast, and like check it out, YouTube, Spotify, all that type of stuff. And I was like, I'm just going to stick them in people's mail slots, and then I'm going to do it like that. No, the mail, not mail boxes. We have mail, like giant thing where you have the key and you have to open it up like that. They made it so it's so tight that you can't slip a card under it. Like they have a blocker on it, so no one to get unsolicited mail. And I'm like, so what I have to do now is I have to bribe the mail person to just put them in the thing when they're putting in the mail. And it's like, you start to realize, like, that's when I first was like, oh wait, yeah, they don't. So unsolicited mail, I never even thought about that. But then it's like, what about newspapers? Like people, I don't really want, or I don't think anybody really reads the newspaper. There's probably some old person out there that reads the newspaper, but they just drop them and then you got to pick them up and throw them in your trash. And most of the time it's like frozen to the cement, or it's like soaked and all deteriorated and stuff like that. You're like, oh, damn it, I got it on my fucking hands. You have an Archie comic on your fucking knuckle or something. Like it's something like that. But I don't know. It's just interesting. It makes me start to be like, the amount of information out there is awesome, but I understand where there's like a lot of like the word skeptic. When you say skeptic, people think you're like a fucking nut job. And it's like, honestly, that's probably the best way, or a lighter term for like, not even like, conspiracy's just been hijacked to the point where everything's a fucking conspiracy. If you say something and someone doesn't believe you, they just go, that's a conspiracy theory. No, it's not, man. Like skeptics, just that word in general, I think should be with everything. You should always be questionable, because I bet you whatever you're learning, like I've talked to so many archaeologists and people that are working on one thing, and then next thing I know, I go, well, but another past guest is an archaeologist in the UK, and they said that it was this, and they go, huh, I never thought of that. It's like, yeah, because now you see that all the information comes together like little puzzle pieces. And I'm like, then there's just one person in the middle rubbing their fucking hands together and flips the fucking puzzle over. Like, I'm going to fuck it all up again. And everybody go back to their separate corners of the world. And it's like, this is the whole point of like connecting. And that's what the whole point of open academia should be on social media. I mean, now that I look at it, like when people are talking about teachers aren't making enough money, I'm like, yeah, honestly, they're controlling future generations. And that might be part of the reason why there's a lot of kids that are fucked up today. Like kids walking out of college because they don't agree with something. And I'm like, you're paying for the fucking school. Like you're making it easier on them. And then they're going to shut down schools eventually, because most people are just going to want to homeschool their kids because of COVID anyway. But you've seen the CDC has literally gone a complete 180 from everything that they were denying in the first place and done this whole flip around, where I'm like, this is what I'm talking about. Like we have some major like hands that feel like they can manipulate the system. And it's just like the person who wrote the Bible or whoever wanted to keep passing down this manuscript. You add things. Do you really think some omnipotent being didn't want you to be gay? He really thought, really, come on. Do you think he's thinking on like a 4D chess level? He's probably up at fucking Mars, fucking making obelisks and shit. He doesn't give a fuck about if you want to fuck whoever you want to fuck. And it's like, we're still falling down on these basic concepts. Like, why is Dr. Phil a show? I can't get past that dude, man. He's such a fucking tool.
I'm afraid you're going to be demonetized, Rob.
For what?
For your use of language.
Oh, boof. At least they keep cursing up. If cursing gets out, then the show's done. I'm letting everybody know that now.
It's fascinating to me. It's all about, like, you look at media in general, like when you go from like TV to newspapers to phones. I remember when my first accessory for my first mobile phone was a shoulder strap, and you're like, because you had the big things that were as big as a brick, that you kind of held up to your head, kind of thing, the sat phones, whatever the hell they were. And then the internet comes along, all this stuff, and it's just, you would think that with the internet and with all this stuff that information would flow freely or more easier, and all it's done is it's become very convoluted kind of thing. And then you have living in a time when you can play games and get paid, and
why people love the 90s so much. People want to go back to a more simple time and I can understand it. I mean, the 90s probably were like I was just watching an old cartoon show, probably one of my favorite shows, Ed and Eddie. That's hurting my ears.
I don't know how to turn that off.
Don't you have a mute notifications? We're in the fucking 2022, the fourth year of this podcast, and you're fucking coming in hot with these notification buttons. What do you got, a Tinder on there?
Just a second.
Now you froze on my screen, looking for the phone. Why is there a cat wagging his tail? This is awesome because Spotify now has videos, so you don't have to watch YouTube anymore. I guess we're going to take should we take a monetary pause? Okay, we're good.
No, it's all good. I'll have to find the mute. Hopefully I won't get any of those. I can mute it.
There's a button on the side of it that turns it to silent. That's all you got to do, man. You have an iPhone, don't you?
No, I have Android.
You should have a button that's like a little slider, and it'll mute your notifications.
Let me.
Do you have a fucking appointment later that you're so important?
I have many appointments.
Jesus Christ. This is like with the tech service people. I can understand why they get pissed off now. Is your internet on? It's like,
there you go. Can you still hear me? Is it all good? It's all good. Okay, there. I turned the volume down. That's
about to say it's going through your it's going through your phone or your microphone, not your phone. So.
Yeah.
Well, but back to what I was saying about the cartoon show. Yes. So there's a series called Ed and Eddie. Now,
I know one of the people who do the voices for actually a
it's
lot of them.
it was just stupid comedic type things. But one thing I started, since I've talked to so many people and I've gotten older, one thing I really noticed that was different was the fact there was a person on there called Rolf. And Rolf always, he was like from some foreign Middle East kind of country. And he had these old weird ritual stuff that they like stuff that his family did from back in the old country. And then he would be like, I am the son of a shepherd. That's what he would say. And it was just so weird, where it's like, that's how weirdo on the block. Then you realize, no, it was just introducing other culture to the cul-de-sac, because every single kid in there was white. Where you start realizing it's like, oh, this is different. Everybody's flaws that everybody has. Ed being called dumb all the time, Double being too nerdy and always bullied all the time, and then Eddie kind of being like a scammer in a way. Kevin being type of jock. Naz being the hot one on the block. Like, they all had kind of significant meaning to their character, even though a lot of their episodes kind of taught, like, I think 90s cartoons did that a lot too, was teach a moral lesson on things. But it was just a different perspective, where I was like, damn, that was like very revolutionary for the time period. Because I mean, if you look 5, 10 years ago, the whole entire idea of like being transgender or anything was like out of the realm of possibility for a lot of people. And now it's like more normalized than it was before, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But then we go back to Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil had a guy on his show, who was a scientist or something, that talked about transgender and said a quote like, I'll have to pull it up because it'll get like a little bit, but it's what I don't like about like Dr. Phil and Howard Stern. You're profiting off of people's pain. It's the main reason I stopped liking Dr. Drew when I found out that he helped run the show Celebrity Rehab. I'm like, you're not real. You're fake. And that's, I mean, not fake in the sense that you don't have a doctorate, but in the sense that's like, if you really generally care about people. I've had episodes I haven't posted because if I have a guest on and they get to like a really like, I could tell they're not doing good, I'll just stop the recording. I'm like, are you okay? Do you want to talk? Like, we can just talk off air. I'm okay to do that. And we do. And I never post their episode, because if you just want to make someone cry on air and you want to make someone feel so fucking bad, I really hate that, because people consider views over a person's feelings. And that's the worst fucking thing you can do ever in the world. And I never want to be like that.
Good. Which is why I've been happy to come on, and and all the people that you got on the show, that you could tell, some of them don't get the idea that it's like, it's conversation. It's just conversation. You have the ones that have an agenda, where it's like, I want to talk about my book. It's like, okay, we'll talk about your book. Or the ones who bring notes, and you're like, you're not going to need notes for this.
Well, it's like what we said with the pamphlet thing. She wasn't expecting a more just normal conversation. She thought it was going to be more of a debate type thing about politics. And I'm like, no, I don't really have a side in anything.
That's the thing. I mean, I remember our first conversation about where I'm trying to describe naked lunch to you, and
Yeah,
about,
you can't comment that on one of my tweets. I'm trying to get academics on, and if they see something I'm
yeah,
tagged in
exactly.
talking about talking buttholes, I'm like, dude, you're
Yeah,
fucking up my guest
exactly.
lineup.
Yeah, I'm not, so I won't. But that was just, it was one of those things where I went, wow, I did not think I'd be talking about that.
Well, I mean, that's the whole point of like conversation. I think it's a lot of people say like, oh, I know what conversation is, but do they honestly know what the term means? I mean, I didn't think I really understood what it was, and every day I'm learning it's something completely different. Um, it's just being here. It's not having anything on your mind, but you're just letting things talk. And people are like, well, that's a great way to get like doxxed for something. I was like, well, what are you thinking about that you would feel that people wouldn't accept you, or it might be against the norm? Why are you thinking that? Then maybe that's something you got to work on. I don't know. But for me, I don't really have anything where I
Or
just start
it's yeah,
talking.
or it's something they need to talk about, because obviously, if they're thinking that way, there's obviously something that they want to maybe say that might offend somebody or piss someone off, or maybe it's pissing them off and they're just not talking about it, kind of thing. That's how, yeah, exactly. How were you raised where you're thinking to yourself, no, I can't talk because you know people won't like me? It's like, what the, where did that, where did that even come from, kind of thing? So yeah, we're missing the whole conversation aspect of I used to love I used to love, like, when I was bartending, I used to love like the conversations that used to happen at the bar, particularly like around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, where you get the here with pub culture, where you get the you'll have that little old guy sitting at the end of the bar who's absolutely hammered, but he's been hammered since 1937 and he's still there, kind of thing. He's probably 168. He's preserved in alcohol, kind of thing, and he's just constantly drunk. But in Canada, where I was, to have some people come in and get drunk at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, sitting at the bar having conversations. And there was this one guy that used to come in all the time who used to quote the Bible to enhance his conversations because he thought it made him sound I don't know what he was doing. He's just one of those guys. And I never interfere with conversations, but I went to Bible school. So I'm standing behind, and I at one point I turned to the guy because he used to be in every week. I'd see him all the time, and I go, "Look, Phil, I got to stop you right there. I'm really sorry, but you're saying that, First James, blah, blah, is this, when what you're actually referring to is third, John, blah, blah. So if you're going to quote the Bible, get it right. And you're misquoting this, so don't do that. Otherwise, have a good conversation."
Yeah.
I don't like people misquoting stuff. It just drives me crazy.
I've probably been at fault doing it myself too, but I mean, I'm more than willing to.
We all do.
But this is what I wanted to show you. So I want to not break this down, but I want to talk about, like, this is how this should have been done way more effectively. You had two people that were obviously on very different sides, but his name's Matt Walsh. He's trending on Twitter right now. This just came out like recently. I mean, it says right here 14 hours ago, but by the time this recording comes out, it's probably a week or so. He made a child's book called like something about a walrus, but I'll play it real quick.
So she went on her phone, and there were people telling her that this isn't pretend, he's really a walrus. And his mother takes him to the doctor to have him surgically transitioned and gets him walrus hormone pills, and then eventually tries to drop him off at a zoo to live with other walruses. Not only topping the Amazon charts, my book has taken the world by storm.
You're saying that there should be no construct of gender, just sex. You're either male or female.
Right.
And
so it's gonna, I have to cut it and then we'll play it again, but because it'll copyright the thing. Actually, you know what? Let's just play it.
Someone feeling in a mental, emotional way that they don't identify with the sex that they have.
See, this is a tactic. What he's doing,
biologically created
passive,
as,
but he knows he's
and
sparking her side or his side, and then
genitalia.
Also with Matt,
if they don't
he's
feel
hitting a
that
topic
way,
that he knows
that
he
there's
feels
no
strongly about. This
construct
should have been done way better.
Describes that, experiences
for
that.
views.
Well, that's got nothing to do with the realities. You can feel however you want. I mean, I could sit here and say that I feel like a tomato plant, but that doesn't mean that I'm actually in those things. So your self-perception, you can have whatever self-perception you want.
Matt brings up a really good point. Matt brings up the point of, like, when you die, when they check your bones, it's not going to say like, oh, this person felt this way. It's going to tell you what your biological thing was. But then the other point that also can get raised as well too is the fact of, like, at this time in society or whatever, if you feel and you don't ever, I don't think anybody should be restricted on anything. So I mean, it just should have been done better. I just feel like it's the same thing with Howard Stern or watching that one show where all they do is fight. What's that show where it's like, you are not the father, and then they fucking. It's
that used to be like,
well, I get you get paid for that shit, but it's like that's why society's just gone to shit. That's why every single person, whenever something happens, has to have their fucking phone out and have a recording or have something like that. There's a way to talk to everyone about everything. And I think that's one of the most important things that you can really do. And it's really all we have as people, is being able to understand and being able to really think things through. But you get so divided, whether it's politics, you get so divided on this, because as soon as someone starts to disagree or be like, I don't know if it immediately turns to, now you're my fucking enemy, you're not on my side. That's not how this works. Communication is the purpose of understanding, and the purpose of understanding is being able to be connected. That's the whole point of everything. And it's like, I don't ever think we're going to hit world peace. Honestly, I'd rather want a fucking apocalypse so I can write my own fucking Bible and throw that out there and watch the pray.
The amount of times you have to say to people, look, just because I disagree with you doesn't mean I don't like you. Is a tough thing, because people think, well, you're not agreeing with me, so obviously we're not on. It's like, well, we can't be friends. It's like, what? Some of my best friends, we have such, when we get together, we have, conversations that heated discussions, I guess you call them, but you know, those, they make you think, they make you do this stuff. I mean, when you were showing me that YouTube clip, the only thing that was going through my head was I think there should be, and this is just me, but I think there should be an age limit on when you could start, when someone could start being gender worried or gender conflicted kind of thing, because a 6-year-old does not know, you know, their
Well, that
parents are going to,
you got to tread lightly here, but
yeah,
that's where Matt Walsh said, he goes, when a 4-year-old boy says he wants to be a girl, does he want to be a girl, or does he just want to play with a dollhouse because he sees that? Like, it's a strong point. It's a good one as well too. It makes sense as well too. The other side of it is like, there's been a large amount of brainwashing of that you have to be male, female, and this. That's true as well too. It's like everyone's got a good perspective on everything.
Look at the I grew up in the pink blue time, where if you were a boy you wore blue, if you were a girl you wore pink. You know, I also grew up in there was a guy down the end of the street where I lived who wore dresses from the time he was like 3 until the time he was like 6. I think he wore a dress to when he went to his first year of school kind of thing, and he ended up becoming a dancer. But he's not gay, he's not anything like that. He was just somebody, he liked the way he could move when he was a kid. You know, he was asked about it. He goes, no, I could move better in a dress than I could in trousers or whatever, you know, all the things. So yeah, so there's so many things going on, about so much brainwashing, so much this, so much that. You know, I was raised in the time of corporal punishment, you know, where we've talked about this, where the strap and the belt, and you know, and my mom would just hit me with whatever utensil happened to be handy, you know, if you were bad. And then there was this period of, you know, I would have loved a fucking timeout if somebody would said, you young man need a timeout. Thank God you're not going to hit me. Awesome. You know, like, so, but am I traumatized? You know, I talked to all my friends and things like, am I, you know, like I watched uncensored Bugs Bunny cartoons.
You know what I blame?
You know, so it's,
this is what I blame. CIA says Savannah syndrome, not result of sustained campaign by hostile power. It's these fucking government agencies. It's all this fucking bullshit that is just making people not know what the fuck's true. I've seen so much flip-flopping where people are going to forget. Like, no one remembers when they were saying that smokers who smoke cigarettes are less likely to be infected, because they said that originally. I could pull up that article in here. Now they're saying CBD gummies can actually help prevent. And it's like, what the fuck are we, like, you're going to see like so much like flip around and all this type of stuff where I'm like, this is why you have people having an identity crisis. This is why you have people feeling like they've been brainwashed or they've been stuck in a line. Because in a sense, yeah, you have. How many things in school were taught because, oh, you have to learn it this way, or if you fall out of line, you get sent out. I mean, I'm an outcast in anything. And I think I can understand that more about someone not feeling like they're in place. I'm going to keep talking because I don't want you to cut me off just yet. I have a point I gotta make.
Okay. Keep going.
I just feel like there's a lot of people that necessarily don't really, they either are doing something because they just want to fight something. And that's okay. That's good to do. But you'll wonder why, like, how many people go to a riot or how many people go to a protest? Do they actually go to the protest, or they say they're going to go and they just kind of group up with all the people around there? Then you see the people that are actually protesting and doing those types of things. You're like, yeah, because that person is really you have to either be so in love of the thing that you're protesting against, or you're super pissed off. Like the QAnon movement. That's a fucking crazy conspiracy type thing, but it's a good fucking movement in a sense of like not wanting kids to be molested. Like that's a good goal. Like, I don't think anybody wants that, but it's like, oh, it went too far, went down some crazy fucking rabbit holes. And it's like Pizzagate too. I've been trying to get into those, get someone that knows more about that conspiracy to come on here. Was it fake? I don't know. But there's been a large amount of massive pedophilia throughout the government agencies of that sort. It's a good tactic that they used. People go, what do you mean good tactic? I'm like, you're thinking from a personal standpoint. Think from a corporate or a business or a CEO. That's what Bezos thinks when he does the Amazon stuff. He's not thinking from an emotional, I care about your family thing. He's worried about making money and making his business super effective. The thing is that a lot of people can't separate that emotion from the understanding or the privatization or all these types of things. It's where that's what you have to do. You have to understand those things. And I get it. It's hard not to get pissed off and it's hard not to rant like I'm doing. But when you can see the way broadly you see it in all things. And that's what this is. You have to look at every single angle, and you can't get mad because that person's doing it that way. They're going to do it that way. Find a way to fix that. Fighting one person like a Bezos isn't going to fix the elite problem that's going on in this country. There is so much of that elitism where you're going to start realizing that you're going to be considered worthless the more you fight against it. You have to work together to make sure that there isn't this type of elitism that happens out there. And I think that's largely what everybody agrees on, is that there's a huge disparity amongst incomes, and a huge disparity, not over on just race, but on wealth.
Yeah, they need like a figurehead to focus on. And I think you're right. Yeah, but if you put up a figurehead, all the layers below get forgotten about, kind of thing, when you're focusing on the one person. And there's a lot of shit going on there. No, all I was going to say was it reminds me of when I was a kid. And this is on such a smaller level, but it was such a big thing for me when I came to the understanding of it. When I was, in my, 10, 11, 12, the big thing was oat bran. Governments were talking about oat bran and how amazing it was for you, and everything, all, breakfast cereals and bread and everything. All of a sudden, everything's being made with oat bran. There's oat bran, oat bran, oat bran. It's supposed to cure cancer, and there's all this stuff. And then about 5 years later, when you're at university and you're doing stuff, you actually find out that the reason why they were pushing oat bran is because they had warehouses full of it, and they couldn't get rid of it. So they started this ad campaign saying how good it was for you. And then when they realized that we don't need to push oat bran anymore, rumors started going around saying oat bran actually isn't that good for you. New studies have been found that it's actually, so no, that's not a good idea anymore. And when I was reading about that in uni, I was going, holy fuck, talk about like what a whole brainwashing thing was. Like, that's a whole ad campaign where the government came through and went, wah, 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 here's this thing, and everybody, because it was logical. You looked at it and you went, yeah, why not? Of course, yeah, this could be a thing. Could it cure cancer? I don't think so, but it's probably really good for you. And it turns out that it wasn't any better for you than other types of bran or different types of things. And it was just one of those things where you went, oh, yeah, the public can be hoodwinked. And has it helped me as I gotten older? Not really. I still get fucked around all the time where you go, oh yeah, I fell for that one. Yeah.
Well, you see like what happens in Australia, where they are like in camps and stuff down there. And then I hear an Australian person talking about it. They go, yeah, but if we have those like camps or those hotel things, that they call it a better name, they go, but you still have your kids wearing masks in schools. And I'm like, yeah. So like, if you really look at it from like my angle and then your angle, you start to realize it's like, oh shit, like we're all kind of doing our weird restrictions. We all have different norms of like we said, the experience thing. What's more normalized to us? For us, it's like when we put people in camps like that, we immediately think of like Holocaust situations. But then if you like look at that, the objective idea of wearing a mask, then it's like, isn't that horrible for the children? There's a lot of people here that hate that too. But we're more than willing to let that go through than the idea, like people aren't going to go line up in camps in Australia. Like we'll do that, but we're not putting masks on our fucking kids. Like there's weird kind of lines, and where people draw the lines is very, very interesting. And I find it's like when you can kind of like, you can examine through the scope of whatever view that's being shown to you. But when you can really talk to someone or be someone who's involved in that type of thing, you're like, no, that's not what the fuck it is. It's like, oh, well, tell me about it. And then you start to learn more, but there's not that ease of access for a lot of people, which makes it more difficult. Like, I feel like independent journalism is probably one of the strongest points in a lot of aspects. And it sucks that podcasts now have so much more power. I wish it went back to the old classic radio days where you used to just fuck around on the air and not have to worry about like overseas issues or all these type of things. Like there's a fucking ship stuck somewhere and you couldn't get any supplies. Nobody gave a shit. Like it went for weeks without being talked about, but now it's like
makeup. Now you have to worry about makeup.
What
because you're a podcast. No, because I'm podcasting this busy. No, I'm not, I just know you have these, but you're, back in the day when it was just, when I talk about back in the, I always laugh about, when I had a grandfather, we all had a grandparent who was like, yeah, back in the good old days, the golden days. And you listen to them and you actually go, Grandpa, what you're talking about sucks. That sounds like, why do you call it the good old days or the golden days? Because it doesn't sound like you were happy. Yeah, I guess not, yeah, because we lived in a box, and we walked uphill to school both ways, and you're like,
Yeah, but that was all
why?
they knew. So that's all that was happiness to them. It's like the happiness that we feel like is happy right now. This is all that we know. And then in 10 years from now or 20 years from now, people are like, damn it, that's a miserable life. And you're like, oh, I guess compared to now, it is a miserable life. Like the ease of delicacy has become way too more accessible in the basic functions that separate us. Like when it comes to getting groceries at a grocery store. Fucking every store is out of meat and all that stuff again because of the storm thing. And we got less than an inch of snow. School was canceled with just the idea that there was going to. When I was a kid, you had to go to fucking school in like 4 feet of snow. They're like, I don't give a. One time in middle school, we had a giant snowstorm that happened where I was off for like 2 weeks. Like it was like great. My dad was like, you got to get like fucking go outside or something, dude. Like fucking, I need my break from you. It's the whole point of school is that we could just ship you off to them and then, you fuck off the rest of the day.
Because there was for some of that. Yeah, because, I grew up in Canada. I grew up in, so I remember exactly. I remember digging myself out a couple times. We had, where a snowstorm comes in and you did get 4 or 5, or the wind blew all the snow up against your house. So you open up the front door and you just see this wall of white and you're like, Jesus.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I can't believe that shit. Like it's crazy to me when I see people take red meat from the store and then they're like, why would you get the one thing where if the power does go out, like you're not going to be able to fucking refrigerate it if it's a horrible storm, or if it's people are like, well, I'll put it out in the snow. Like my buddy Mark had to do that in Texas when they had that giant freeze. And I'm like, get canned shit, man. Like when I'm out in the snow, man, I'm sitting there getting snow off my car this morning. And as I'm driving, more snow is flying up and hitting my, like, I didn't get any of the side windows. And I was like trying to turn. I was like, I got to roll my fucking window down. Snow's going to come in. I'm like, Jesus, like, I want to go to a climate where there's like, it's like purgatory. There's fucking nothing. There's no heat. There's no cold. There's just nothing. You're just sitting there. You don't feel anything. You just are, it's just bland, like a cheese pizza. It's good, but it's not extra.
I'm trying to think if I've been to anywhere like that.
Hell, purgatory.
Yeah. So I'm just with what you're describing, where it was sort of like,
let me give you an example. If I told you to describe what angry feels like, what would you say?
Red.
Okay, don't put it into a form of a color, but what would you say?
What does angry feel like?
What does angry feel like? You remember what that feeling is though, right?
Yeah, I remember the feeling. Yeah.
Now tell me, what about feeling happy? Can you describe that as easy as you can describe being angry?
No, actually.
Yeah, isn't that fucking weird?
And it makes you wonder if you were part of. And actually, that's a very interesting experiment, because part of how I was raised was happiness. Yeah, if you were happy, show it all the time. Blah, blah, blah. So there was no bottling up. If you're happy, you're happy. But if you were angry, I don't want to see it. My parents were like, I don't want to see that, none of that, none of this, no negative emotion shit, So you sat on your anger and it was like acid. It was like a bubbling stew that was just kind of sitting there. And so that you go out and then you might lash at one of your friends, or you might do something because you're just sitting on all this, like a pressure cooker. There was, that's a good way to describe it, kind of thing, where you're like, whereas you're happy, everything was like, let's throw, and, I remember, I remember when I was the eldest son, and I remember one of the first times I went out with my friends, and I came back sober. I'm like 16 years old. And my dad pulls me aside and he goes, "Are you drunk? Are you sober?" And I go, "No, Dad, I'm sober." He goes, "Why? Were you doing drugs?" And I remember thinking, what? So you would much prefer, and he actually turned to me and goes, "I would much prefer you came home drunk than sober, because I don't want to be worried about you doing drugs."
What?
And you go, and you kind of go, what? Yeah, you go, what? Why would you do that to me, Dad? Like, why would you tell me that you prefer? So I would have to sit back and I'd have, I'd go out with my friends or something, and I'd have like an old bottle of beer or something sitting beside the house. I go, "Just a second." I got it. And you go and you go, hi, Dad. Ha. And he goes, oh, good. Out having a good time here. Like, yeah, Dad, I was out having a good time. It's all good. It was just one of the strangest. Again, these are all, this is an experience that it was something that I experience all the time. So when you share it with somebody like you and they go, really? Because that is so not normal. But to me, it was normal.
Yeah.
And for my dad, he was so used to going out and drinking with his friends and coming home. That's what he equated to having a good time.
Yeah.
So if you weren't drinking, what were you doing?
My grandfather used to tell me all the time that his dad would get drunk with his brother, which would be his uncle, my grandpa's uncle. And he used to get drunk, him and his dad would, and then they would take him as he was 14 years old, and my grandpa couldn't swim, and they would throw him in the pond, and they would watch him crawl back to shore or try his hardest to crawl back to shore. I mean, it was like a chest deep water to him, he said, so he could stand, but it was just the scariest thing, and would keep throwing him back in for shits and giggles. And it was like, you got to learn somehow. And that's how he would do it. And my grandpa's been afraid of water ever since. And it's like, yeah, it sucks, but he doesn't look at his dad like, I fucking hate that guy. He just goes, yeah, I mean, that was a different time. And I was like, wow. Like, you start to realize it starts to soak in a little bit. It's like, eventually there's not going to be like the number of family dinners that happen now, they drop it more and more every single year. It's going to be more normal to do a virtual dinner, or do more normal to maybe, not really have to worry about getting giant prepared meals. We can just do microwavable things because everyone eats on their own schedule.
I remember, and it used to piss us off so much as kids. I remember, but one of the things my dad used to, he would not change. He would not bend on this one thing. When it was someone's birthday, we all had to be there to take a picture when they brought in the cake and sing happy birthday. He didn't give what the fuck you did before and what you did after, even if you didn't eat the cake, but he needed that picture with everybody in it. And this is, back in the Kodak, the Instamatic, not the, phone stuff. So you had to pose for this picture, and he would not take no for an answer if it was someone's birthday, up until after we were 18, as long as we were home. But if we were at home, it was our birthday, everyone in the family had to be there for that birthday so they could take the fucking picture. And you could just see there's some birthdays I remember where we're going, you get that kind of, yeah, I'm smiling, Dad. Just, why am I here? I could be off, drinking with my friends, having fun. But he would not bend on that. And it was one of the things that I could not understand. And from what you just said, I think about that. I kind of get it now. I get what he was afraid of. He was afraid that we wouldn't, family wouldn't be that important anymore, or it'd be like, yeah, I'll be there, or we'll have our phone calls, or you have your Zoom. With COVID, we've had our Zoom stuff, our Zoom meetings and our Zoom family get-togethers or whatever, but you have those.
Yeah, but what the fuck is that? There are people I see on Twitter talk about how they couldn't see their parent or whoever die because of the COVID thing. And the next thing you know, the CDC comes out and says a bunch of shit that's like, well, what the fuck? I couldn't see I would have been there on their dying day, but you didn't fucking that's the fucking shit that really gets me heated up about this whole entire government shit, where I'm like, you gotta expose all the evil about that stuff. But man, family values, I used to value it so much, where if you said anything about my family member, it doesn't matter, it's my fucking family member. Now that term is like a hollow fucking word. It doesn't mean the same thing that it meant before. And it's not of the times. It's just the whole situation of growing up and realizing how many people are at your door when you actually need them. Like, it's a different thing, man. People will use family and go farther than anything. But I got one of my closest family members who was a big part of this show in the beginning and is a big supporter as well, too. Corey, if you're listening, he's my cousin, but not by blood. He's me and my brother are half brothers. He's my brother's cousin, but he's a fucking A1 supporter, a good messenger when you need to talk to him or you need to, reach out to someone. That's what it is. Friendships are a stronger word than family nowadays. Family now, they get divided over political shit and they won't fucking talk to each other anymore. It's a weird fucking time where you start to realize, like, maybe it's good that it kind of shows the cracks in the foundation, but necessarily there's a lot of people that are just kind of like smiling, shaking hands and taking a picture because they don't want to know that their relationship's that sensitive. And it really sucks because when you're in a jam and you have no one to turn to, it is the fucking coldest feeling that you could ever feel. That feelingness of empty. Like, it's very, very difficult. It's like, for me, I like to choose isolation. Like, I'd rather not have anybody there so I don't have to rely on anybody to cheer me up when I need it. But it is a very positive when someone can talk to you like that.
Yeah.
Well, I don't message. If you message me, I'm not answering. I'm not answering anything. Not you. I mean, not anybody. Just because I don't have time to be on the social media device because I realize how fucking leeching it is. Social media is hollow. It's not real. It's put up your article, put up your work. That's it. But then you get into the weird thing where you only care about hanging out with this person because of views or all this type of stuff. I don't care. I honestly could not give a shit. It's that simple. And I feel happier that I think that way, that when I actually talk to someone or I message someone or whatever, if someone, I get into a chat, I actually care about the fucking person I'm talking to. You have Kasper, no other guest has any value into my life that is going to increase it money wise. The only thing you increase is my happiness when I talk to you. That's it. I know that was coming off like in a weird way at first, but no, I mean it as like a good sentiment.
I get it. I knew where there was, it's social media, ironically, is like social distancing and military intelligence and stuff. It makes no sense. Social media is not social at all. You spend more time, as I was saying earlier, I caught myself just sitting down liking posts and things, not even really reading them. It was just like people responded to me. Awesome. But it's like, it means, so what? I mean, even if somebody just looks at your picture and goes, yeah, that's awesome, but they didn't like it, so does that mean they're not your friend? No, they didn't either. They didn't think about it. They didn't have time, or it's social media. And we're losing the social aspect of media. I think media is becoming very, when you have like your Twitch influencers and your YouTubers who are on there, and even that situation, like when they're talking to their chat and things like that, that's not really social. Like you have people who are,
it's strictly business now.
Yeah, because you have, like, when you have an influencer, you have somebody that, it's a difference between somebody saying, you should be like me, or you want to be like me. Like an influencer will say, you should be like me, kind of thing. Whereas somebody else just does stuff and you kind of go, you know what? I like that person. I like what they do. I would like to be like them. It's totally different than somebody going, you should use these products. You should do this stuff because I use them. So you should use them too. That's a different thing altogether. Or they're sponsored by somebody, or they're talking about something. And, they're saying, well, maybe we should look at it this way. Not all of them are like that, but
well, it's just littered with like promotions. Yeah. It's littered with all this stuff where it's like, I just don't want to be on the device anymore. It doesn't mean I don't want to talk to you. I'll be more than happy. Like if you send me an actual message, if you send me a fucking reaction to my story, I'm going to fucking curse you under my breath. Only because I'm like, what the fuck am I supposed to say to this? If you send me a message, like something like what's on your mind, hoping you're doing okay, that type of stuff, yeah. I'll respond because I care. But when it comes to any part of my device, I'm never on my like podcast page anymore besides a post that I was supposed to do by the time I record. I was supposed to do that an hour ago. I don't give a fuck. I'm tired of it. Like it's the same shit. It's like, are you willing to destroy your own happiness for the luxury that you might get a view or you might get this type of stuff? And that's with anything. Everything now is like, just did this thing, look for it on Friday, just did this, look for it on Thursday. I'm like, are you doing things that you want to do? Like, I'm trying to make a book at the same time as writing a song and doing a bunch of other shit, because if I'm not doing a podcast and it's too cold to film my movie scenes, I got to be creative in some aspect. And it's like the world consensus on pain is what I was going to title it. And I don't even know what it's about. Maybe I was just going to start ranting and just start writing like quotes down and find a moral and, see if it loops in together. But you start to realize it's like,
you are an amazing individual, my friend. You are. I'm listening to you. I'm listening to all this stuff and I'm going, holy fuck. Like, and it's, in my head, you don't want to go, if Rob can do it, I can do it. But it's one of those things where it's your decisions, your choices, you are somebody that, look at it this way, from when you get antsy, you get antsy, it's your, what you choose to do is creative. It's a creative thing. Whereas some people, when they get bored, they can lash out, they can be violent, they become trolls, internet trolls. Their fun is harming someone else, and you haven't done that. You've chosen to turn your boredom into some type of creativity, whether you finish it or not. Big deal, kind of thing. Kind of thing. It's
That's
where
just
that'll go.
ADHD.
Yeah.
It's a pain in the ass, man. I'll be on my phone and I'll be like, I'm so bored. Do it. Like, I haven't turned on my TV in a month and a half. No, 2 months probably. My Xbox is dusty. Everything. I just like the only thing I ever do is if I'm not doing a podcast, I'm doing something else or I'm working, and it's just like, or working out. That's the thing, is like, I only have a certain amount of energy or unlimited capacity of energy for a certain amount of things. And I feel like that's with everybody. You have that one thing and you got to funnel it into. If that means being a troll, I mean, go ahead. If that gets your fucking jollies off, sure. But I mean, just my goals in mind isn't necessarily about trying to hang out or get famous people on my show to boost my ratings up. More about like, I enjoy the actual script of the conversation or the free flowing style of it. Where does it go? Is it going to be deep? Is it going to be funny? Is it going to be this? I mean, you fucking started off your last episode talking about the anniversary of your dad's death. That just sucked me in a weird. That was in the morning. I had other podcasts that day. I was fucked for the rest of them.
I shouldn't be laughing. It's actually I am laughing. That's because that's how I look at it. Life. You look at and
I was fucked up, man. I was putting my hand through my hair like, Jesus Christ.
Looping back to what you said, that was a normal for me, kind of thing. So there was something I've lived with every day. So when you share that with someone else, they look at you and they go, fucking hell, or really, or all that things. And then you realize, and you can take someone else's reaction to that and yourself, you can go, actually, you know what? This isn't normal. But so imagine all the things that we think are normal. And actually, normal is a horrible word. It's a horrible word to use because I think, to me, normalcy is character assassination, where I don't think there is a normal anymore. Like there isn't a normal anymore. There is that whole bar of what is normal, I think, got destroyed and eaten, and it's raised and lowered so much because
it was never normal.
Yeah, but when I was raised, there was a standard of normal and you kind of went, this is what you were supposed to be, and all this, when we went back, looking back to like boys wore blue and girls were pink, and then this, and you did this in school, and you did this, and you didn't do that, and you didn't, there were certain things that you were supposed to adhere to as a person, and where someone would go, yeah, that's normal behavior. And for me now, I don't believe there's a normal behavior. You can go, well, that's possibly, and even like good or bad behavior. Like you can't really look at it, society is dictating, this is I don't know where this is going now, but to me, normal's just gone, kind of thing. So you have to decide for yourself what you're doing. Is it good for you? Is it good for society? Is it good for your, neighbors? Is it, whatever? Are you harming anybody? Like, for me, if you're doing stuff, and as long as you're not harming other people, go ahead, kind of thing. But if the moment you start harming someone, whether it's verbally, physically, then you need to step back, or other people need to go, wait a second here.
Well, somebody does shouldn't have you feeling mad, or shouldn't have you feeling upset or anything of that sort. But I also think that's a product of transfer people that move. I mean, there's the mass amount of, I guess, people that have moved in the past 2 years is insane. Like that's what I've been trying to do. Like I've been looking at places I might want to live, and I'm like, I would never want to go to fucking Tennessee. There's nothing wrong with Tennessee, but it's a barbecue place. It's a red meat place. I don't eat that. I only eat like fish if I'm going to eat anything. It's like, it wouldn't make sense for me to fucking move there. I wouldn't be able to function at all. But then you start looking at all the places. It's like, maybe, there's all these different places. What's more similar? It's like, do you want similar? Do you want brand new? Are you going to be okay with brand new? And then you end up hating it. You start realizing it's like, maybe a lot of this is just the fact of a lot of people aren't happy with the situation that they're in. And maybe they're taking it out on something that you're doing. Like, for instance, when I'm in a good mood, nothing really pisses me off. If someone tries to talk to me at the gym, I'm like, all right, yeah, cool, man. Sorry, I'm going to get my workout done, but thanks, man. Then like, if I'm in like a shitty mood, like I'm working out or something, some person will come over and try and talk to me. I'm like, I'll ignore them. And then they keep going and going and going. I'm like, dude, what? Like, I'm fucking working out. like you start to see like there's that snap is because now you're more on edge and now you're back in your seat. Now you're more on edge. Now you're back in your seat. It's not really, I mean, if society was going to be bipolar, it's not really that. It's just an aspect of like, there's so much shit that happens on a daily basis that can really fluctuate your fucking life. And that's what I think was the scariest thing for a lot of people, is that their routines were going to change, which I don't necessarily think is bad or good. But I also think when you become complacent in the way that things roll, you get very upset when something is taken away from that. And that makes it more difficult to really kind of set yourself up in a way.
Well, yeah, in a way, like I look at it on a very low level, like a subliminal level. You can look at fashion, and the way fashion used to be, there used to be this is what people are wearing. Oh, you're not wearing what other people are wearing. You're not normal. You're not fitting in. And there was depending on how you dealt with peer pressure and how old you were when all this was going on, you either knuckled down and wore what everybody else was wearing, or you just didn't give a shit. Nowadays, I don't think it really matters. Like there isn't really like there are trends there, like you can see them, like there are fashion trends, but there isn't that type of, look what people are wearing now. Everybody is wearing these now. You should be too. Now it's like, yeah, some people are doing this now. This is changing. That's doing that. And I just think that, behaviors and things and all this stuff. I think what has changed is people's sense of accountability. Where I think before, when you get into the social media stuff, one of the things that social media stuff has taken away some people's sense of accountability, because now they think that, I can, even when you're talking about the CDC stuff and all that, somebody up there thought this was a good idea because somebody just went, well, just say this thing. What are they going to do to us? We're the government, or we're the thing, like, go ahead, and they don't realize that. And actually, I shouldn't even say that. There's probably people out there who do realize the amount of people that they're going to piss off by saying this. It's like, yeah, but what are they going to do about it? Not going to do anything about it. It's like, are we going to get, are we going to lose any money off of this? Are we going to get pay cuts? No, just, this. In fact, there's going to be people, the important people, that are going to be happy that we did this. And you're like, holy fuck, And so, but so even little thing, when you go back to like internet troll, that person has lost their sense of accountability. If they think they can just get away with like cyberbullying somebody just because they feel like it, the Constitution is a very weird thing when you talk about like the freedom of free speech. And do you know how many amendments there are to the actual
like 26
free speech? Yeah, well, there's all these amendments. One of the funniest things I ever heard to somebody once, like when they were talking about like the right to bear arms, and somebody went, I don't know if it's the right to bear. It's in our Constitution. You can't change the Constitution. And the person looked at him and said, what do you think an amendment is? It means that 26 times people looked at the Constitution and went, this isn't working, guys. We need to change it. So you amended the Constitution. So even free speech is, when they say, you have the right to free speech, there's actually 9 things, concrete things, that you are not allowed to do, even though you're supposed to have free speech. And that includes things like hate crime, inciting a riot. I think there's libel. Actually, the difference between libel and slander, and I went into somebody, slander is saying something to somebody, libel is putting it in print. So if you put it in print, the same thing. That's the difference between libel and slander. But there's these things that you cannot do, even though you're supposed to have free speech. So there's this whole, like the whole accountability of, where you have people going, I can say whatever I want. It's like, no, you shouldn't.
You can, but should you?
Yeah. Yeah. It's sort of like, have you ever had those, like, you're walking across a bridge and you have this thought, what would happen if I took my keys and I just threw them into the water? What would happen? Just your brain will do that. It just lances off those things. The other half of your brain grabs that and strangles it and goes, no, you idiot. Of course you don't take your keys and throw them. But there's that moment where you think, yeah, what would happen if I did? Yeah, that'd be interesting.
See, my brain goes, what happens if I jump from here?
We've all had those moments too, or you're driving and you go, what would happen if I just let go of the wheel?
Or just veered left. Yeah.
Yeah, or just veered left. We all have those thoughts. We all have. It's like when you talk about censoring thoughts and things like that. We all have those moments where negative thoughts come in. We can't, they just. But it's what you do with those thoughts.
Well, you need to
because of
joke
the way.
about that shit, and you need to
Yeah.
talk about it. The more you talk about that type of stuff, the more it understands for someone out there who might be experiencing the same thing, that you're not fucking different. I know people like this idea, like, I'm different than everybody. That's fucking cool. In some aspects, that's great. I'm glad you have that. But in the idea that you're the only one experiencing the same amount of pain, there's someone out there experiencing the same thing as you. And I think the more times you have that being spoken out there, instead of banning it or censoring it or doing that type of stuff, you start to normalize it. Like, you're not a freak. You're a fucking human being with emotions, and everyone goes through these fucking rough spots. And I feel like a lot of people need to hear that at times, because I know plenty of friends. I mean, I think when we first started talking, I had like 7 people die on me. Like, it was fucking a rough go of things. And it was like, 2 of them were like suicides, and you start to be like, oh my god, like the amount of opioid addiction that's happening now, people just overdosing, people taking drugs, people are hurting, man. And you got to talk about these things. If you talk about the pain, if you talk about the good times, you talk about the bad times, you talk about this. That's why motivational shit was so popular. People wanted to hear that type of stuff. But then it became, buy my book and you'll know the tips to be successful. I'm like, fuck you. Stop selling a book. Give that information out for free. It doesn't make sense that you're keeping all that stuff hidden. Nobody cares about your successful business tips. People just want to feel like they're validated and not a piece of shit.
Well said. And that's exactly what it is. I mean, we're down. It'll be, when you talk about social media, if anything, remember the social part of it, people. I mean, like, when's the last time you actually spoke to one of those people that you like their posts, or, as you said, type them an actual message rather than just reacted to their thing. And hopefully I've stopped reacting to your stuff at like,
you just did it to me before this podcast.
But that's different stuff. That's
I mean, I get it. I know you're just letting, like, hey, saw this, awesome job. I get it. It's just, I get, with all my own anxieties and shit.
Do you know how long it takes me to choose the right emote?
God
I
damn,
gotta.
fuck off.
I'm kidding. So that's the thing. No, I mean, and where I think we lose at least we're not in that. I mean, there was that whole culture of where people were doing like tech speak. At least that's kind of gone in a way, where people are, where people were like leet. I'm leet. It's because I've spelled it L33T. It's like, that sucks.
Well, it's like with ADHD, how my brain goes is that if I'm having something happening at the same time I'm trying to do something, it's hard for me to pay attention to the thing I'm doing. I start focusing on the other thing. When I'm driving, and if I get a message or something, it's hard for me not to be like, gotta respond to that, gotta respond to that. If you don't respond to that, then how are they going to know that you care about them? Are you not going to respond to that? You better respond to that. Hurry up and respond to that. Whereas eventually, just like the device in general, all the amount of notifications and everything that I get, I had to shut everything off. I don't get any message notifications or banners really ever. I'm always on my personal page where nobody fucking messages me. It just helps balance, because when you're in a world of stress and you're in a world of like already at like a high level of alertness, you're trying to do anything to minuscule it and minimize it. Where it's like, sometimes, like for me, I always tell people, if I'm silent, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong. It just means I'm focusing and I'm working things out of my head. And at that point, I don't really feel like talking sometimes.
I think for you, I think somebody like you, I mean, if you were silent for like a week, you'd be like, I think Rob's having a problem, kind of thing. Whereas, if you go for like a day or two where you just kind of disappear, and I think everybody's like that. Everybody needs, I think you're smart, really smart in just shutting off for a while, because we do live in a time of media overload, and with everything, this, and if you can turn that off for a while, like there's like people are talking about TV shows that I've never even heard of. I go, really? Is that a thing? And and it's just, are you like, decide, are you being creative? Are you taking advantage of your time? Are you doing stuff, and that's really all we can do is, is just, is that what you're going to do this year? Like for me, it's like, don't make a resolution, but if you're going to make a change kind of thing. And, and so it's like, what are you going to do? Like, are you, yeah, that's just it. We've hit the gamut of stuff to talk. Holy crap, we've talked a lot of stuff. And I hope you learned something for this conversation, young man. So, because I certainly have. I've taken a lot out of this. So it's
I learned that your dad had a weird fucking boundary of what's right and wrong when it comes to
I
his
well,
kids. You know, in some
that's
aspects in his
yeah.
head, he was like, I don't want my kid to be a fucking loser. He needs to be out partying and drinking. Like a lot of parents feel that.
Well,
Like, is my kid the fucking loser kid? You
well,
know,
just
like
I should write a book, when it comes to all this stuff, because I don't know if I told you, but I mean, I had the talk, like, the sex talk when I'm 17. And my dad pulls me aside and he goes, son, are you gay?
damn.
And I went, not that I'm aware of, Dad. Why? And he goes, because you don't have a girlfriend. And at the time, I was just being drafted into the NHL doing stuff, and I was a very selfish individual when I was younger, and I was like, I didn't have time for girls. I didn't have time for everything. I was doing shit. I had places, and I went, Dad, I don't have time. I got hockey and practice and stuff. And he stopped me and he goes, no son of mine is going to be a queer. You have 1 month or I'm writing you out of the will. And you're the eldest son. And I went, holy crap. It's just one of those things where you go, where are you coming from? Like, boy, where does that stuff, like these conversations, like he did not act like that during the day, kind of thing. And you would have conversations, but then he would just pull out these little things, like, where you go, why aren't you drinking? Are you, you need a girlfriend, you need this, because, people are looking. And and he was also one of these type of guys who during like water rationing and thing, he would have us sneak out and water our lawn at like 3 o'clock in the morning, because he was afraid of what the neighbors would think about our lawn, and he was very obsessed with our lawn, living in suburbia. And I was like,
Your dad had
Dad,
OCD out the ass.
well, if he had OCD, it was like, then you do it, Dad. Like, why are you making me do it if you got OCD? He didn't have OCD. What he had was fear of what other people thought.
OCD isn't just like ritualistic habits that you do physically. They're also mental things too that you think too much about. It's kind of like a sense of overthinking, but he's trying to literally correct and make a perfect life for what he envisions to be perfect. That's OCD.
Yeah. Well, I remember actually.
It's like you can't control the weather, Tom. You can't control the weather. It's like, but today was my beach day.
My ex-wife had said to me, she said, I am so OCD, I spell it CDO, because it needs to be in alphabetical order, doesn't it? And I actually had a t-shirt that said, I suffer from ADOS, which is attention deficit shiny, which is pretty much, which is how I'm a boy. I mean, I'd be doing stuff going, la, 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 la. And all of a sudden I start clicking, I'm following a YouTube link. And all of a sudden I'm watching Japanese videos, Japanese cat videos, or, and you kind of go, you look at your watch, an hour's gone by and you're like,
well, my show is perfect for you because I'm all over the fucking board.
And you know what? And you make me laugh, man. Which makes my day. So what a fantastic way, Friday. It's a great way to close.
Now I got to post it on Friday. Thanks, man. Thanks.
Wait, no, you don't have to. No, actually, today, the filming day is actually, but you know what? Days are irrelevant. It just doesn't matter.
Time is irrelevant. It's a construct.
Time is irrelevant. For me, it's the end of my week. For you, it might be something else.
Kasper, where can people find you?
They can find me at kaspermichaels.com. And just, pardon me, Kasper-Michaels.com. Somebody actually owns my name. Buy
it.
I think they $2,000.
Fuck that. What are you supposed to pay his fucking rent? What the fuck?
Exactly. The guy went, $2,000. And I went, how about I just put in a hyphen for free? And it's like, oh, you don't want to do that. I do. And I have. That's how they've done it.
Save $2,000. Unless you start making billions where you can toss that out like chump change.
That's right. I'll buy his business. I liked it so much, I bought the company and I fired that ass.
I'll link it all in the description. It's been a pleasure as always, Kasper. Thanks for joining me. Stay tuned for our next episode of Out of the Blank.